Were you meant for your job or was your job meant for you? When career changes hit, what does it do to you? Career changes, forced or by choice. That's our topic today on the Compounding Change podcast.
This is the Compounding Change Podcast, sharing stories of small but meaningful changes that compound into amazing impact. Brought to you by Shannon Davis and daviscompoundingchange.com. Change happens fast. Take advantage. Discussions on this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Now, here's your host, Shannon Davis.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Compounding Change and our special mini-series, Do Something. I'm Shannon and I'm here with my sister and co-host, Jenna. Today's show is brought to you by Jenna, Stoliker, leadership coach and retreat guide. So you can learn more at jennastoliker.com.
Hey everyone, thanks Shan. So glad that you're here with us again. So today's topic and our conversation is going to revolve around career change, and whether it's forced or chosen, career shifts can really stir up quite a bit. And what I've noticed just in my own experience, but also the people that I'm working with, when there's a change like that, it's things like fear and imposter syndrome that come up for us, but as well as excitement and possibility. So
Exactly. Yeah. For some people, it's job loss. For others, that there's that inner nudge, like there's something more for me, but I don't know what it is yet.
Right. And for a lot of us, it's both. I know I have felt both, like simultaneously. I think it's something interesting to hold both of those kinds of emotions at the same time. And it's a moment that really shakes you up and it opens you up to something new. So let's dive into the conversation. Let's talk about switching careers. In some ways, it feels like just switching gears sometimes, but really about asking the deeper questions like, who am I now? And what does this next season stand for? Or what do I stand for in this next season?
Right. Kind of feels personal, as I've done this a lot, right? So we were talking about this topic and it did resonate with me, not only because I've personally made some big shifts over the years, but because a lot of my clients and firefighters I work with are currently dealing with changes. I don't know that there's a community that influences each other more than the firefighter family. They talk and share stories and advice while they're working together, shift after shift. Their shifts are 24 hours long. So you're just immersed in somebody's life and you work with the same people over and over. Sometimes I go into stations and I've noticed that there's a level of satisfaction or dissatisfaction, and it's contagious. So I've actually been in stations where everyone is thinking of a career change. It'll be confidential, but it's person after person who I'm talking with in that department, and they're either changing careers, getting out of fire, or they're going to change departments, cities, whatever. But then there's the lifers, their father, grandfather. They were all in the same city as firefighters, and now they are, and even their kids are. Wow. We know that. I mean, it seems like it should be that firefighting would be a career thing, like a specific career choice. And I didn't really think about that, obviously, until having those conversations. As we know, I've personally reinvented myself more than once, right? Which I guess I take after dad more than mom. Mom, a teacher like a firefighter is kind of start to finish, typically career to retirement. But seriously, I know we've had this conversation and probably on here, I know you and I have had it, but my pivots were actually more fluid than they may sound. But those changes were not without hiccups, definitely.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. And you have reinvented yourself a few different times. And yet it's not like you shed something that you were doing and completely left it behind. I look at it as more as blossoming into something else or using that experience, right, and moving into like a different phase. And I think, in some ways, I look at you, Shan. I think you've lived so many different chapters, and so let me ask this question because I
You're
really am
aging me.
curious. I am just a few, just a few.
Right.
A lot can
You
happen in a
didn't say
small
decades, you said chapters.
chapters.
Right,
Exactly, they can
right.
be short chapters.
Mhm.
But okay, so here's the question that I sit with, and even though we're sisters and we do talk a lot, there is. So let me just put this question out there: was there a moment that felt really like a true turning point for you where you said, okay, I'm leaving this version of myself behind?
A lot come to mind. But we've already covered the divorce topic, right? So there was that. But as far as careers go, I mean that can kind of be like a career, right? Especially when you have kids. But
Mhm.
specifically, I think that closing that chapter was when I sold the gym. Um,
Mm.
I felt like that was I had finally had an identity um, separate than being a mom. And it felt like letting go. It felt kind of like a failure at first, selling the gym, but then it was also freeing. So it was about listening to what I wanted and what I needed, and giving myself permission, as you said, to close that chapter.
Oh, that sounds really powerful, right? Because we were talking about career change, we're talking about kind of basically it's the pivot
Right.
that happens. And there's something that just really struck me when you said that, like giving myself that permission to
Mm-hmm.
close the chapter. It just feels so intentional. Um, and in some ways, I mean, I can relate to that, like just all the different changes and the transitions in life. Um, in the realm of career change, if we're going to stay with within this
Right.
topic
Right.
context, in some ways, I relate in a little bit of a different way because I've stayed in this like learning and development, human development, leadership development space basically most of my career. Now, there have been changes within that, slightly different paths or avenues I've taken within that. And definitely when I was working internal in organizations, there were so many mergers and acquisitions, which meant layoffs, which
Mm-hmm.
meant new leadership team. Someone has a new vision, so switching gears. And each of those created a shift, not just within me but just within the role that I had. And so those shifts forced me to reevaluate oftentimes, and those questions that were coming up were, am I still aligned with my purpose? Like, do I want to
Mm-hmm.
stay in this role? Do I want to stay with this organization? Which sounds like, maybe some of the conversations you have with the firefighters as well. Things change and you start to ask, like, am I aligned? And am I doing work that matters to me? I think those are
Right.
the two questions for me that really came up a lot, or probably still do. I'm like, I'm still working. I'm not.
Right. Right.
It will still continue to come up.
Well, and I think we talked about this previously about if it's not serving you, and it doesn't mean to kick it to the curb,
Mhm.
just overnight, but you do have to, like you said, am I doing work that matters to me, right? Or is it aligned with my purpose?
Yeah.
Something like that, right? But I do remember talking about it with you. It definitely wasn't an overnight decision. So, like you said, you've been in the same situation. And going from a W-2 or that guaranteed paycheck, which as we've seen recently with a lot of people that with the layoffs, mergers, even recently, just big time,
Mhm.
within my own household. But how did you do that to go from that W-2 paycheck to going into your own coaching business? I remember talking about it, but I know it's not just, like I said, an overnight shift.
No, it isn't. And it's kind of, so talk about like holding two things at once, right? Like you can be really excited and you can also like have a lot of fear come up as well. The same thing was happening for me too. Is like, and some level, I'm pretty risk averse. I'm pretty
Right.
conservative
Yes.
in my investments and whatnot. And yet there are times when something clicks in me and I just say, oh, forget all that stuff and just move
Mm-hmm.
forward. And it can look like, wow, she's really courageous. Wow, she's doing something, not thinking it through.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I hold both. And so for me, making that switch from being employed by one company
Mm-hmm.
to starting my own coaching business, I have to say it was a buildup. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and was like, I'm going to do this today. what I realized, like that buildup was I had been, and I still do, but I had been helping other leaders navigate change for years, right? But I always turn it back into my, like, what's my journey as well? Because what am I seeing happen with the people that I'm working with? In what ways do I relate to that? In what ways is it helping me grow? And I realized I was craving more depth, more meaning, and more choice than what I was currently experiencing when I was employed
Mm-hmm.
by one, one employer. So starting my, like, this like career move to like start my own business, to me it felt more like a calling. And I think in some ways that there's that part of me, like as risk adverse as I can be, there was something that's saying you're not going to grow anymore if you stay here.
Right.
You need to get yourself out of, in some way, like out of a bit of a comfort zone. Although honestly, I wasn't feeling super comfortable in the position, which got me thinking about doing something different. But I think asking those questions, how am I aligned? Am I doing something that has meaning and purpose? As I dove down deep, I connected with what the calling
Right.
was. And so that was kind of what helped me make the leap
Well, and you
to
can't just
business.
keep one toe dipped in the water. I mean, at one point, and you just have to dive in. So
Yeah.
if you're a little bit here and a little bit there, you're really not serving anyone. Um,
Yes.
so, of course, things can always seem simple and cut and dry when we're talking about somebody else, but
Hmm.
let's also talk about the messy middle. So the stuff that people don't see, whether you're a singer, an actor, an actress, a business owner, whatever it is, there's that place in between that was that we're trying to figure out what's next, right? So for you, what helped you stay focused when that road was less than straight, a little more bumpy?
Hmm. It really helped. And, I talk a lot about like, reflective practices and, in some way regard, journaling can help with that. But honestly, I think what really, really helped me the most was getting clear on what I didn't want anymore,
Mm,
like naming it, like writing it down with intentionality and flipping it to what I did want.
mm.
Right. So just who I am. I like to make lists. I like to have a nice, organized, color coded spreadsheet. I know that might just make some people cringe. Some people like get excited.
Right.
Uh, but it was really making that list. I think part of it is because I'm also a really visual person, so I need to see it on paper. What am I moving to? What do I really, really want? And reframing, looking at what I don't want to what I do want, that became my guide through all that uncertainty and through all the bumpy roads. Um, but because you've been through so many different changes as well, like, what about you? Like, what did the messy middle feel like for you? You've worked hard to get where you are, but now what? Hi, I'm Jenna Stoliker, a leadership coach who helps people navigate change with intention. So you don't just survive the next chapter, you grow through it. Whether you're stepping into something new or wondering what's next, let's find your next right step. Learn more at jennastoliker.com.
Well, first of all, circling back to what you were saying,
Yeah.
I think that writing that list is so important, and or articulating it. I mean, sometimes you and I will talk about something, or I'll talk to somebody else about something, and sometimes when I say it out loud, it either is stupid or it clarifies things for me.
Yeah.
So writing it down if you don't have somebody to talk to, or talking about it, is something that I just think can make a lot of sense, no matter how anal that sounds. But um it also brings up, for me, it was self-doubt. um Starting over, like you said, can be energizing, but it can also be exhausting. I had thoughts like, especially when you're transitioning, and you had mentioned imposter syndrome, right? So will people take me seriously if somebody previously viewed me, and I've done it to people as well, didn't realize that they had a law degree or something, and you're like, they're just home taking care of their kids. Yeah, I mean, you don't realize that what else they have to offer if you've seen them in one role. So I was viewed as a mom, so will they view me as a personal trainer? And oh, guess what, now I'm a financial advisor. Can I make that leap in my own mind? If I can't buy into it, how can somebody else see me in a different light?
Oh my gosh, that's okay. That was really powerful what you just said. If you can't make that leap in your own mind,
Mhm.
and I think that is so much of it. So, again, I want to pull through like that thread of we're talking about, or we started this conversation around career change. We're, I think what we're really talking about is when there's a pivot
Mhm.
in your life, when you're faced with that pivot, what is happening for you internally as well. I mean, that was just so powerful what as you said, and it's getting me thinking too about some stuff that I'm experiencing in the here and now as well, and can I embody that for myself,
Right.
right? And I do get why these questions come up, and of course they're going to, like, that's just part of the change. Like when you're stepping into something new, it's natural to wonder if others are going to see you the way that you want to be seen,
Mhm.
right? But from where I stand, as I look at you and what you've done over all these years, you've proven that you can make those leaps with courage and integrity, right?
I sure
And I
hope
think it's
so.
just yes, you do. And I think that's so you had talked about, just sometimes talking to other people to get your ideas out loud, like you hear them differently. And
Definitely.
I think likewise, like in conversations that, we've had, or conversations that people might have with their friends, is to have people even reflect back to you like, you are courageous. You have made leaps before. You have done, this or that, and I can see where it might be leading. And I think it's just so helpful to have somebody remind you of that because, your past resilience, that's evidence that you can, face whatever this pivot is. You can do a career change, change industries, um, move into something completely different that really sparks your joy. It's not baggage at all. And I think sometimes people look at it as like baggage. I'm carrying this, and I don't know if people will still see this. I look at it as it's experience, it's evidence that you're resilient. Let it teach you.
Yeah, definitely a good reframe. And again, we've talked about that, and we've also talked about it correlating to everything, whether it's a failed marriage or a career change or a career move or a layoff. I mean,
Yeah.
you've learned from everything that you've had before. Hopefully, like you said, let it teach you. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Don't, let that build your next thing. So, because you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience.
Oh, absolutely, right? And when you think about like all the transitions you've made, like what kept you anchored through it all?
Well, for me, easy answer, 100% my kids. That was just at the core of everything. Um, knowing that I wanted to model integrity, courage, definitely work ethic. That's always been a thing, probably to a fault. But even when things were hard, I kept asking, is because I do believe being of
Mhm.
service to other people, but is this how I can be of service? How can I be of more service? And is this who I want to be?
Ah, yeah, I mean, right. Again, more powerful questions. I think we're really diving deeper here and touching on like our values. How are our values driving us through these
Yes.
changes? Like when there's that pivot, when it's a career change. Um, and as I relate to the values that really coming up for you, I found like for me, my core values, like what came to the surface was it's curiosity, it's connection, um, being of service as well. I mean, it's probably no reason, no big surprise. We come from the same family,
Right.
probably share a lot of the same values, but those tend to be like my compass, especially during change or when there's a pivot. And I do find myself asking, like, am I living out these values in this job or in this
Hmm.
career, or am I chasing approval and security? So it's a really
Definitely.
interesting question to have,
Yeah.
right? Especially because I am risk averse in many ways.
Right. Right.
So.
That gives us something to reflect on, especially if somebody's at a crossroads right now. So just in our fashion, right? I know we've done our do something challenges, but we've also talked about pivoting with our focus for these episodes without it feeling like a homework assignment. So, what question or thoughts do you want to leave people with after this episode? Not to
Ah.
throw it all on you, but Teeing it off.
Teeing it off, right? Yeah, I think, yeah, again, like before we started recording this, we were talking about in what ways do we make our own pivots and within some of these episodes that we're recording. So what came up for us, and I want to share this with anybody listening, is first of all, let's just keep it simple. If there's something that you found intriguing or that piqued your curiosity in this episode, just jot it down, right? That might be the question or the thought for you. If you wanted to take it just a little step further, I would say grab a piece of paper and write down your list of what you don't want, right? And or you can start with what you do want. Ultimately, you're going to get to both. You're going to have one column that says what I don't want, one column that says what I do want. Some people find it easier to start with what they do want. Others feel like they know they want something different. They don't know what it is. And so in that case, I say, start with what you don't want. Look at that list. And then for every item on there that you don't want, flip it. Like look at what an alternative might look like. So start there. It's a little bit more of a contemplation. If you feel compelled after you do that, you're like, hey, that was pretty easy. Because I said, let's try and keep it simple. So then what do you do with that list? That next stretch piece, like the next step, is take a look at your list, and that I want list, that can actually point to what some of your own core values are, or, I would say maybe what's underneath those desires. Maybe it's freedom, maybe it's growth, maybe it's contribution, but those really are your cues to what your core values are. So that's kind of the general piece. If you want to make it even more practical and grounded, because we were talking about career changes and those kinds of pivots related to that, you know what? If you're starting to think about maybe having your own business and you haven't done that before, the Small Business Administration has some really fabulous resources on their site.
Definitely.
If we can probably drop that link in
I'm
into
sure.
the stuff
Yep.
below.
Yep.
If you're facing a layoff, review your current expenses, identify what's essential. If you're really truly considering just a general pivot, like, do I stay in this industry? Do I go to a different industry? Just certainly explore whether your savings might be able to support a transition now, or speak to a financial advisor to get
That's
a clear
novel.
picture.
Yes, definitely do that one. That
You like that one, huh,
I
Shannon?
like that one. That is important. That is important. That's definitely a solid action plan. So what you're saying is, whether it's emotional courage or financial clarity, it's the small intentional steps that help you feel less overwhelmed and more in control. So kind of what we keep preaching, right?
Absolutely right. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to do something. I think that again, that's where how like these kind of conversations came to be. It's like you can be frightened and excited all at the same time, but don't let the fear overcome you so that you don't do anything.
Right.
Right. You just have to be honest about where you are, what support you might need to move forward.
That's great. Yeah. So that kind of leads us to next time we are going to talk about retirement, right? But not so much in the traditional way, asking the question, what are you retiring to? So again, more thought provoking than just reaching a goal. You won't want to miss it. Until then, you can like, subscribe, and share this with a friend. And remember, change might feel overwhelming, but it's often the beginning of something meaningful. Till next time.
This has been the Compounding Change Podcast with Shannon Davis. If you are a firefighter or first responder, you know that change happens fast. Life changes, finance changes, compounding change. Shannon Davis is a certified retirement counselor who understands the needs of Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters members. Click on daviscompoundingchange.com to learn more. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Retirement Plan Advisors LLC, a federally registered investment advisor. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to DavisCompoundingChange.com or this podcast. Please note that investment involves risk and no statements made in this recording are indicative of future performance. The Compounding Change podcast is brought to you by Shannon Davis.